Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner talking home run. Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner like ooh.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, April 13th, 2026, and this is the Monday Report. I'm your host, H. James K., and today we are going to be talking a lot about Detroit sports, and then we're going to hit up some motorsports news, and then we're going to get out of here short, sweet, and to the point. So right off the top, we got to talk about the Detroit Red Wings. Hey, Hockey Town, the Wings are mediocre for the 10th year in a row. Yay. Alright, so the Detroit Red Wings they failed to make the postseason for the 10th year in a row. They are officially the only team in the NHL not to make the postseason since Steve Yzerman became the Red Wings general manager something like 8 years ago. Every other team has made the postseason at least once. And then there's Detroit. The team was booed off the ice on Fan Appreciation Day while celebrating the team's centennial season over the weekend. The scene was a stark, noticeable rebuke of Detroit hockey from fans who deserve better. They collapsed in March. Again. It's the same old story. The Red Wings start out pretty hot, then they get into the middle of the season and things are kind of shaky, and then March rolls around and they totally collapse and fall flat on their face amongst an avalanche of injuries and uninspired play, and they miss the postseason, even though they're technically in the upper half of teams from a statistics standpoint. It doesn't matter because they still miss the dang playoffs. And it comes down to a couple of things. So, the team has lacked second and third line scoring all season. The first line's not bad, but there are guys on the second, third line who really should be like fourth line guys, surrounded by other better scorers to help succeed. They're more role players and not guys who can be front runners. So when you just lack depth when you lack scoring depth, any injury is a critical injury. So for the Wings, if guys like Patrick Kane or Dylan Larkin or Rasmussen get hurt, there just isn't a lot of offense for the Wings to go to in their stead. So, and this is multifaceted. There's multiple reasons for this. So, first of all, from a roster building standpoint, Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings believe in building through the draft and through their farm system. They don't like to sign really big-time free agents. They don't like to trade a lot for big-time players. They want to bring guys up the old-fashioned way, the purists' way. And that works. That's great if you're nailing those guys. But if your farm system is continually falling short and failing to produce the superstars that a Stanley Cup championship team needs, then you're just middling. And for the Wings, they don't want to sign a big-time, big-money free agent because they know they're going to have to overpay. Plain as that, because they're mediocre. The Wings are mediocre. So for the Wings, they're going to have to just shell out and pay someone way too much money just to get someone in the building. Because at this point, if the Red Wings go through another offseason where they talk about how they like the guys they have, and they're going to bring up a couple of prospects from the farm system, and they don't spend big in free agency and bring in someone with a splash, the fans are going to riot. The fans are, because the fans have had enough. I love Steve Yzerman. I grew up in the Steve Yzerman, Chris Chelios, Pavel Datsyuk, Heinrich Zetterberg, Chris Draper era. I grew up in that entire era of the Wings at their most excellent. I know what that is like. And he was a huge part of that. But at the same time, if it's not working out as him as GM, then fans are going to stop caring, because it seems like the Tigers, oh boy, Tigers are a whole other discussion. It seems like the Wings are just content with existing at sometimes. Like down the stretch, the Wings, it was clear they didn't even care if they won or lost. What was that, about a week ago? A week ago, they took the lead against, I think it was the Minnesota Wild. Don't quote me on that. They took a 4-3 lead. And then immediately Patrick Kane hooked a defender, gave up a power play, which gave the other team a power play. They went down and scored, tying it up, went into overtime, and beat the Wings in a shootout. The Wings had the game won. And from then on, the Wings it was like the players didn't even care. They had checked out. They knew they weren't going to make the playoffs again. They knew they weren't going to win a Stanley Cup. So it was like, why even try? And people within the organization need to stop pretending that fans don't notice when the players don't give a shit. Sorry for my language, but it's the truth. When fans can see the fact that the players don't care and the front office doesn't care, why the heck would fans give their hard-earned money to a team that doesn't care? So even though it goes against their entire philosophy, they're going to have to spend $1 bazillion on somebody big to get a big name in the building. Because if they don't, the fans are not even going to care. They're just not going to show up. Which is even worse, because apathy is the death of a franchise. So that's a huge part of this. Another part of this, honestly, is we need to talk about Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin has been a captain for the Red Wings for a long time. And I think it might be time to take his C away. From a leadership standpoint, I just don't think he's a captain. There are back in the 2025 season, he was super whiny. The 24-25 season, he was super whiny about how they didn't trade for anybody at the trade deadline, how it deflated the roster, and he was super pouty about it. And this year, he's been super pouty and whiny about the team's effort. And it's like, if the general attitude of your best player is whiny, dissatisfied, and emotionally checking out, then that percolates down the rest of the roster. So if Dylan Larkin is going to continue to be one of these leaders who's a Debbie Downer, then maybe he shouldn't be a captain. Leadership is about lifting people up as much as it's about telling it like it is. And if Dylan Larkin cannot lift the team up and keep the team engaged and keeping them together and buying in, then he shouldn't be a captain. Because he's not a leader. And I know that's crazy because he's from the Detroit, he's a local boy. He came up skating at Lakeland Ice Arena in Waterford. I know the whole story, but at the same time, if he's not the captain, then he shouldn't be leading the team. It's worse to have the sentimental favorite have the C than it is to hurt the sentimental favorite's feelings and win a Stanley Cup. What would you rather do? Would you rather make the emotionally challenging choice and maybe improve the team's chemistry a little bit and improve the leadership of the team a little bit and maybe go to the playoffs and win something, or continue doing what you're doing and just hoping that he doesn't get all whiny and pouty and check out again? But I don't think they're going to do that, because how can you take his captain away without saying, yeah, we're just done with you? And I think Dylan Larkin's a great player, and I know full well that if he goes somewhere else, he'll succeed, and he'll win a Stanley Cup, and it'll just, it'll be like Matt Stafford leaving. But, like with Stafford, sometimes you have to part with the emotional fan favorite to get better. Sometimes you have to take your medicine, and it might be time for the Wings to take their medicine. All right, moving on from the Debbie Downer Red Wings, let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team. Michigan defeated the Yukon Huskies for the 2026 NCAA Men's Basketball National Championship last Monday. The team finished with an astounding 37-3 record for the season, the best record in Michigan basketball history. So, I believe this is the greatest Michigan basketball team ever. And I know what people are going to say. What about the 89 team? What about the Fab Five from the 90s? What about them? Yeah, the 89 team won a championship. They did. And that had some great players on it. But everyone always points to the Fab Five as the greatest team ever because they had so many NBA guys and Hall of Famers, but they didn't achieve anything. They didn't win a championship. This Michigan team has gone higher and further to such a degree. They're so much better than any other Michigan team from a record standpoint, and points per game, and offense, and defense, and Ken Pom, and all of these different metrics. They are just the best Michigan team ever. And I know what people are going to say. They're going to say that, well, they're a bunch of mercenaries who were paid to come into the portal. Okay, yeah, they were paid. So what? People don't get after NFL teams for signing free agents. They don't care about NBA teams signing free agents. What is so different about college? Oh, because they're supposedly student athletes? They're not. Anyone who actually believes that college athletes are student athletes is fooling themselves. They are semi-professional athletes. And we need to start treating them this way. Maybe they need to be started being paid like TAs get paid. Either way. That's a whole other discussion. But the fact is, Michigan's team, yes, they are a whole bunch of guys who were brought in from the portal. All 5 starters are from the portal. Granted. Cadeau and Yaxel and Ademara, they're all from the portal. But the reason why they're not mercenaries is because they're not just in it for the money. They play together. They play as a team. They play to lift each other up. They're willing to pass the ball and not be the guy to get the stats and not make the flashy play to let someone else do it if that means they can win the game. We saw this in March Madness. There were times where Yaxel Lindeberg is just struggling. And instead of him going, gosh, it's gotta be about me, it was Elliot Cadeau. It was the Elliot Cadeau show. And Elliot Cadeau wasn't shooting. He wasn't shooting well. His ball wasn't falling. So instead he became the Greek god of assists and rebounds and defense because he knew that's what he needed to do to win the game. So I don't know about you, but that's not mercenary to me. That's a team. Mercenaries are guys who at the first sign of trouble go, well, I got to look out for me and mine. I got to get good stats so I can get an NBA contract. I got to get good stats so I can go to the portal and get another bunch of money and maybe win a championship somewhere else. No, it was, yeah, I'm shooting horribly, so I'm going to pass the ball and play defense because that'll help other people score so we can win the game. That's not mercenary. That's a team that's coached the right way, that has the right kind of culture and the right kind of people. They're not mercenaries. And I hate this whole, bought not built. Screw you. That's just not fair. That's not accurate. It's not fair because, quite frankly, Michigan didn't have the highest NIL budget in college basketball. There were several teams who didn't even make the damn tournament who had a higher NIL budget who weren't an actual team, who folded at the first sign of trouble. Or Florida, they got in the tournament, but they didn't go all the way. They had a bigger NIL budget than Michigan did. Tennessee did too. Michigan beat the crap out of Tennessee. So don't ever tell me that it's just that they were NIL guys who were bought and paid for, and that's all that matters. It's not all that matters, and you know it, because they played as a team, they played together, they were an actual team. It doesn't matter where they came from. It doesn't flippin' matter. They're the best team in Michigan basketball history, and I'm not going to be dissuaded from that because having watched them, they just play like the best team in the history of Michigan men's college basketball. Period. Point blank period. Now in other news about Michigan basketball, Dusty May has signed a long-term extension that was announced at the championship parade in Ann Arbor. So Dusty May ain't leaving for North Carolina. He ain't leaving for anybody. He is here to stay. And you know what? I love that. I love that he's sticking around because he's adored by the Maize and Blue faithful, and he's got a good thing going, and he's already won a championship. Where could he go that he's going to get more than that? Go to North Carolina, and if you miss the tournament, or you don't make the Final Four or the finals, you're going to get run out of town in 3 years? Who wants that kind of pressure? He can do more, he can achieve more, and have better results at Michigan than at North Carolina or Duke without half of the criticism and stress and pressure. Why would he ever leave? What is there? Oh, it's the prestige of being the man who could win at Duke. Who cares? Who cares? Because you know what? Yeah, if you go and you win, that's great. But if you go and you don't get the mountaintop and you get fired in 4 years, where does that leave you? Yeah, you're going to have a buyout with a whole bunch of money, but you're still out of a job. You still gave up a good thing at Michigan to go fail somewhere else. So I like that Dusty May is staying at Michigan. I'm so happy about that. I'm so pleased that Ward Manuel was able to get that job done. And I'm going to say, Ward Manuel, don't fire him. He might be a bit of a scumbag, and he might be kind of having some moral decay in the athletic department, but you cannot deny the fact that Michigan basketball, Michigan men's basketball, women's basketball, baseball, softball, hockey, volleyball, football, they're all doing well. They're all winning things in the last 5 years. Michigan athletics has never been this good all over the place. So that's leadership from the athletic director. I mean, what else can you say about it? That comes from the top. He's hired good people. He's created a good environment, given these teams the resources and facilities they need to win. That's the athletic director, folks. That's all that is. So I don't want Ward Manuel to get run out of town. And if he does, I don't think the guy we hire after him is going to be nearly as good, because I don't trust the regents and the president of the university to make that decision. I just don't. We got a good one right now, and it's time we need to accept that and just say, yes, he has his flaws, but the results speak for themselves. I'm so tired of this moralist, but he's not a Michigan man, the Michigan standard. Whatever, dude. Who cares? Yeah, Jim Harbaugh had some scandals, and yeah, Sharon Moore was a perverted scumbag. Okay, and Harbaugh's now in the NFL, and all the people who were wrong in his staff are elsewhere or fired. And Sharon Moore got fired, and they've turned the page. What else can you say about... What else do you want him to do? They fired them. Juwan Howard is gone, and Dusty May is a freaking saint. Sharon Moore is gone, and Kyle Whittingham is the new coach, and he is the most goody two-shoes dude you have ever seen. He's a Mormon. What do you expect him to do? He's the antithesis of this moral decay that everyone talks about. Michigan made mistakes, they corrected those mistakes, and hired good coaches who will set the right moral standard. What else is there for Ward Manuel to do? I support the man. He's good at his job. It's time we got to stop pulling out the pitchforks and the lit torches and trying to run him out of town, because the grass isn't always greener, folks. It's not always better. All right, let's talk about the Pistons. The Detroit Pistons finished the regular season 60-22 with a 133-120 win over the Indiana Pacers on Sunday. Some would argue that this is the best regular season in the Pistons' history. I don't know if I would argue that, because I think the 89-90 season with the Bad Boys was really something, but this team was one of the most physical teams in the NBA. You know, they're as physical as the NBA will allow teams to be. And had to take a drink real quick. And they're good at scoring, and they've locked down the 1 seed. They've won 60 games. They're only the third team in the history of the Pistons to do that ever. Think about that. 60 wins. That's like climbing 2 Mount Everests for the Pistons. It's just never done. So the team has locked up the 1 seed, and they're rocking and rolling. They're pretty healthy. They're not as healthy as I would like them to be, but they're pretty healthy. And they're going in, and we don't know who they're going to play yet, to be honest with you, because there's still the play-in tournament. So there's one of like 4 teams, like it's like Miami and Toronto and Atlanta and someone else, I think. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at the bracket, so I haven't taken a glance at it since all of this has gone down, so I don't know. But whoever they play, they're going to beat them. Probably in 5 or 6. I think probably 6, because playoffs are hard. You know, the other team has NBA players too. And then I hope they can get out of the second round, unlike last year. I want to see them beat the damn Knicks. I want that revenge. I want that revenge series. I want to see them sweep the Knicks in the playoffs. I want that bad, because the Knicks fans were so obnoxious last year, and we should have beaten them. And I want to sidetrack a little bit to talk about Cade Cunningham and his injury for a second, because I think that's going to play into this. So Cade Cunningham had a collapsed lung, missed like 11 games. It was like a month ago this happened. So he was out, missed 11 games, and in that time, before then, he was basically the offense. Everything went through Cade Cunningham, and Cade Cunningham is great. He was an MVP candidate before he collapsed his lung. So it's one of these things where, with him out, the team was forced to invent scoring from other people, to find the confidence to know that they can score when Cade Cunningham isn't the focal point of the offense. And that's a good thing, because what that means is if, God forbid, something happens in the playoffs, or Cade Cunningham is just having a bad day, the Pistons know they can get offense from someone else. They can get offense elsewhere. It doesn't just have to be, they don't just have a fastball. Now they got a sinker, or a curveball, or a forkball, or a changeup. They got other pitches that they can throw. They don't just have to throw heater over the middle. So I think that bodes really well for the Pistons in the playoffs. This is a team that is way better than last year's team, which was already so good last year. And I think this team is going, I'm not predicting them going all the way to the championship, the finals, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the Final Four, to be honest with you. I think they're just that good. They're really, 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 really good this year, and I'm super excited to watch the playoffs. All right, let's talk about Formula One. So McLaren F1 hired Gianpiero Lambiase, who I hope that's how you say his name. Lambiase, yeah. He's Max Verstappen's highly regarded race engineer over at Red Bull. He's been Max's engineer at Red Bull Racing for years, and he has been hired by McLaren to take over as the chief racing officer by 2028. So the thinking is this has been done to allow McLaren team principal Andrea Stella to delegate some of the on-track responsibilities and focus more on the behind-the-scenes stuff. There's also rumors that it might be that Andrea Stella is going to leave McLaren, and they want someone who's highly regarded and brought in to be his replacement waiting in the wings. Excuse me. So this is pretty seismic, because if Max Verstappen stays in Formula One and then GP leaves for McLaren, what does Max do? Because Max has 2 years left on his deal, I think. I know he can opt out by like June of this year. He can opt out again in like October of this year. And then I think it's by 28 he's a free agent, I think. So maybe McLaren is hoping that he'll follow GP over to McLaren, which I mean would be ridiculously awesome, seeing Lando and Max Verstappen on the same team. I mean, sorry, Oscar, but it's got to be the two championship champions, guys. So, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. But there is talk about, what happens, if GP leaves Verstappen and Verstappen doesn't retire, does he leave? Because he has always said that he'll never drive for anyone but GP, because he really likes Gianpiero Lambiase. He really likes this guy. He's worked with him forever, years and years and years. So it's an interesting kind of thing to keep an eye on in the coming years, of what happens with that. Because if GP does just kind of take over as like the racing strategist guy for the team and Stella's at behind the scenes, what does that do to the team dynamic? How does that affect McLaren's performance as a team? So interesting stuff to keep an eye on in the coming years. All right, then the last thing we got to talk about is IndyCar. So with Formula One canceling 2 Middle East events in April, that would be Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, the Formula 2 calendar has now had to schedule events to fill in the gaps. Formula 2 has scheduled races at the Miami International Autodrome, which is racing around the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami, Florida, and another one at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, Canada, in order to make up for the canceled events. These events, being in Miami and Canada respectively, are the first time Formula 2 has ever gone to North America. So So it's one of these things where, on its face, that doesn't seem like it's big IndyCar news. But while the Grand Prix of Miami is in like October, the Canadian Grand Prix is the same day as the Indy 500, which means that the Formula 2 race is like the Saturday of the Indy 500. So Colton Herta will not be taking part in the Indy 500 this year. There was some talk that he would drive the number 98 Andretti Global Honda, which that was a car that used to be owned and operated by Marco Andretti through the Andretti team, but with the Andretti family basically getting out of IndyCar racing for the first time since 1965 completely, the car has gone back to Andretti Global, and there was talk that it was going to be Colton Herta's car. Well, with Colton Herta not going, and Andretti is not running anyone other than their like big mainstay lineup normally. They're not running an extra car, and with no other kind of extra entries on the horizon, the 33rd spot in the lineup is going to go to AJ Foyt Enterprises. We don't know who's going to be driving that 33rd car, but that's going to be the end of it. There is not going to be any bumping this year, probably, more than likely. Now, who knows? Prema could pull a rabbit out of their hat on May 1st and shock everybody. I highly doubt that. Things could happen, but as it stands right now, no Colton Herta at Indianapolis, which is unfortunate because, he's so good, and no bumping, which sucks. It's disappointing, but it is, it is what it is at this point. It is, it's the state of the economy being what it is right now, with the oil prices and the war and inflation and all this other stuff. So it is what it is, but no Colton Herta at Indianapolis this year. AJ Foyt Enterprises will be running the 33rd car. We don't know who that's going to be yet, but stay tuned for the greatest spectacle in racing. All right, that's going to be it for this episode this week. So before we go, I do want to talk about some things. So I am setting up a website, hjameskk.com. It's not live yet, but hjameskk.com will be going live. I'm making it with Squarespace, and with that is going to be coming more stuff about my books, and we're going to be making some changes to the podcast, which I'll get into in the coming weeks. But the changes to the podcast aren't going to be huge, but there will be, an expansion of what topics I'm talking about. The logos are going to change a little bit. I'm going to add a new segment that I don't want to talk about yet. But those changes will be launching on Monday, June 1st, 2026. So stay tuned for that. The website will be launching at that day, and the new segments and all the new changes. But until June 1st, everything stays the same as it is right now. The same logo, same format, same topics. Nothing changes. But June 1st, we're going into a new era for the Monday Report with H. James K. But in the meantime, for those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and everywhere else that podcasts are available, thank you, and thank you. For those of you watching on YouTube, please consider liking, subscribing, hit the bell icon to get notifications, and please leave a comment to feed the algorithm. My name is H. James K. Thank y'all for tuning in. Until next time.